They say everyone has a price. That's what Linda Sterling believed. As the ruthless CEO of Sterling Dynamics, a man worth $40 billion, he had bought companies, politicians, and silence. He thought he knew human nature until a rainy Tuesday night in a rundown diner in Seattle. He walked in with a trick question designed to humiliate a waitress named Andrew. He expected her to crumble. He expected her to beg. But the 4 words she whispered back to him didn't just silence the room. They shattered his entire empire. What she said was kept secret for 10 years, until today. This is the story of the question that cost a billionaire everything and gave him the only thing he couldn't buy. Linda Sterling was dying, not in the immediate, rushing to the hospital sense, but in the slow, corroding way that rust eats through iron. It was a Tuesday in November, the kind of day in Seattle where the sky looks like a bruised peach and the rain feels personal. Linda sat in the back of his Maybach, watching the city blur past through tinted, bulletproof glass. At 58 years old, Linda was a legend. Forbes had called him the architect of the new century. His competitors called him the Great White Shark. He had liquidated more companies than most men had hot dinners. He had a private island in the Maldives he hadn't visited in 3 years, a collection of vintage Ferraris gathering dust, and an ex-wife, Catherine, who was currently suing him for an additional $200 million she didn't need. But the rot wasn't in his bank account. It was in his chest. Earlier that afternoon, Dr. Aris Thorne, the most expensive oncologist on the West Coast, had sat across from Linda in a sterile office that smelled of lavender and bad news. "It's aggressive, Linda," Dr. Thorne had said, cleaning his glasses to avoid eye contact. "Pancreatic. You have 6 months. Maybe 8 if you're lucky." Linda hadn't blinked. He hadn't cried. He had simply asked, "Who knows? Just me." And the nurse. Buy the nurse's silence. Double her salary. If the stock drops before the quarterly earnings call, I'll sue this hospital into the ground. That was Linda. Even facing death, he was worried about the share price. But now, riding through the darkening streets, the silence of the car was deafening. He looked at his phone. 4,000 contacts. Not one person he could call to say, "I'm scared." He saw his reflection in the glass, the sharp jawline, the cold grey eyes, the bespoke Italian suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. He looked powerful. He felt hollow. "Driver," Linda said, his voice raspy. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." "Home?" "No." Linda looked out the window. They were passing through a district he hadn't stepped foot in for 30 years. The crushing poverty of the gentrifying fringe. Old brick buildings standing next to glass condos. "Pull over, anywhere. Just stop the car." "Sir, this isn't a secure area. Security protocol dictates." "I don't care about protocol," Linda snapped, the anger flaring hot and fast. "Pull over." The car glided to a halt in front of a flickering neon sign. Jerry's 24-hour diner. The J was burnt out, so it just read Eris. Linda opened the door before his security detail could scramble out of the escort vehicle behind them. The rain hit him instantly, soaking his silk tie. "Stay here," he ordered his bodyguard, a massive man named Cole. "Mr. Sterling, I can't let you. I'm going to get a cup of coffee, Cole. If I'm not dead in 30 minutes, come find me. Until then, leave me the hell alone." Linda slammed the door. He didn't want the VIP treatment. He didn't want to be Linda Sterling, the billionaire. Tonight, he just wanted to be a ghost. He pushed open the heavy glass door of the diner. A bell jingled, a cheerful sound that felt mocking. The place smelled of stale grease, old coffee, and lemon floor cleaner. It was mostly empty, save for a trucker asleep in a back booth and a couple arguing in hushed tones near the window. Linda chose a booth in the far corner, facing the door. Old habits died hard. He always needed to see the exit. He slid onto the red vinyl seat, which was cracked and held together with silver duct tape. He placed his hands on the Formica table. They were trembling. 6 months. He had spent 58 years climbing a mountain, only to realize the peak was covered in ice, and he was suffocating. He needed a distraction. He needed to feel superior one last time. He needed to prove to himself that the world was exactly as cynical and transaction-based as he believed it was. That was when he saw her. She came out of the kitchen carrying a pot of coffee, wiping her hands on a stained apron. Her name tag was crooked. It read, Andrew. She looked to be about 25, though the dark circles under her eyes aged her. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands escaping to frame a face that was pretty, but worn down by gravity. She wasn't walking. She was trudging, favoring her left leg slightly. She spotted Linda and offered a tired, practiced smile. It was the smile of someone who serves people who don't look at her. "Just you tonight?" she asked. Her voice was raspy, like she'd been crying or smoking, or maybe just shouting into a void. "Just me," Linda said, his voice clipped. "Coffee? Black. And do you have pie?" "Cherry, apple, and something that was supposed to be lemon meringue but looks a little sad," Andrew quipped, pouring the coffee with a steady hand. "The sad lemon, then." She chuckled softly. It was a genuine sound, surprising Linda. "Coming right up." Linda watched her walk away. He noticed her shoes. They were cheap white sneakers, scuffed grey, with the sole of the left one peeling off. She had wrapped a rubber band around it to keep it together. Pathetic, Linda thought, or an opportunity. He took a sip of the coffee. It was terrible, burnt and acidic. Perfect. He pulled his phone out and checked the stock market. Sterling Dynamics was up 2%. He had made $40 million while sitting in this booth. He looked at Andrew's shoe again. She was probably working for $8 an hour, plus tips. A cruel idea began to form in Linda's mind. It was a game he used to play in his early days, back when he was hungry and mean. He called it the price check. He wanted to see how cheaply a person would sell their dignity. It validated his worldview, that everyone was a whore, and he was just the best pimp. If he could prove she was corruptible, then his life, his ruthless, cutthroat life, was justified. It was just the way the world worked. Andrew returned with the pie. It did look sad. "Here you go, sir. Can I get you anything else?" Linda looked at her. Really looked at her. "You look tired, Andrew." She paused, the pot of coffee hovering. She blinked, surprised by the personal observation. "It's been a long shift. Double." "Why work a double? Boyfriend trouble? Saving for a purse?" He made his tone deliberately condescending. Andrew's jaw tightened. She set the pot down. "Rent, actually. And my daughter's insulin." The words hung in the air. Insulin. Linda knew the price of insulin. His pharmaceutical division, Astra Sterling, had raised the price of their insulin product by 400% 3 years ago. It was a strategic market adjustment. It had earned him a bonus of $12 million that year. "Insulin is expensive," Linda said neutrally. "Tell me about it," Andrew sighed, rubbing her temple. "But you do what you gotta do, right? Enjoy the pie." She turned to leave. "Wait," Linda said. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. He didn't carry a wallet. He carried a money clip. He pulled it out. It was thick with $100 bills. He peeled off 5 of them. $500. He placed them on the table. Andrew stopped. She looked at the money, then at Linda. Her eyes widened. "Sir, the bill is only $6. Sit down, Andrew. I can't. My manager, Rick, he's in the back, and if he catches me sitting with a customer, I'll buy the diner and fire Rick if he opens his mouth," Linda said calmly. "Sit down." Andrew hesitated. She looked at the money again. It was likely more than she made in a week. She sat on the edge of the booth opposite him. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice guarding itself. She had clearly dealt with men who offered money before, and it usually involved things she wasn't willing to do. "I want to ask you a question," Linda said, leaning back. "A trick question, actually. A test. I'm not really good at quizzes. This one is easy. It's about value." Linda tapped the stack of bills. "This is $500. It's yours. All you have to do is answer the question honestly." Andrew looked at the cash, then at Linda's cold grey eyes. She saw something there. Not lust, not kindness, but a strange, desperate intensity. "Okay," she whispered. "Ask your question." Linda took a bite of the lemon pie. It tasted like chemicals and sugar. He swallowed it slowly. "You said you need money for insulin. You have a daughter. How old is she?" "She's 6. Her name is Lily." Andrew's hand instinctively went to a locket around her neck. 6 years old. Cute age. Expensive age. Linda leaned forward. "Here is the scenario, Andrew. Imagine I am a genie, or the devil. It doesn't matter. I place a briefcase on this table. Inside it is $1 million. Tax-free. Cash." Andrew let out a nervous laugh. "Okay, I'm imagining. With that money, you could buy enough insulin for a lifetime. You could buy a house. You could quit this job. You could fix your teeth." He noticed she had a chipped incisor. Andrew flinched slightly at the personal dig, but nodded. "Okay. But," Linda raised a finger, "there is a condition. To get the briefcase, you have to do one thing. There is a man in the hospital. A stranger. He is old, he is sick, and he is going to die anyway. Maybe in 6 months. Maybe 8. Linda's heart hammered against his ribs. He was talking about himself, though she didn't know it. "You have to go into his room," Linda continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "and unplug his life support. No one will know. He won't feel pain. He dies today instead of 6 months from now. And you walk away with $1 million. You save your daughter. You save yourself." Linda stared into her eyes, searching for the greed. He needed to see it. "So, Andrew," Linda said, "here is the trick question. What is the price of a stranger's life? Would you kill him to save your daughter?" The diner went silent. The rain lashed against the window pane. Linda watched her face. He expected hesitation. He expected her to rationalize it. "He's dying anyway," she would think. "My daughter has her whole life ahead of her." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He uncapped a fountain pen, a Mont Blanc limited edition. "I'm not joking, Andrew," Linda said. "I am Linda Sterling. You might have heard of me. You might not." Andrew's eyes flickered. "Recognition? Fear?" "I have the money," he said. He quickly scribbled a check. "Pay to the order of Andrew." He left the last name blank. "Of $1,000. He signed it with a flourish. He slid the check across the table, next to the pie. "This is real. I can make a phone call and have a lawyer here in 10 minutes to draft a non-disclosure agreement. No one dies, obviously. This is a test of character. But if you say yes, if you admit you would do it, the check is yours." Linda sat back, feeling the triumph rising in his bile. "Take it," he thought. "Prove me right. Prove that everyone is a monster when the price is right." Andrew looked at the check, The zeros trailed off the line. $1 million. She looked at her peeling shoe. She looked at the rain outside. She thought of Lily, who had been reusing needles because they couldn't afford a new box until Friday. Slowly, Andrew reached out a hand toward the check. Linda smirked. Gotcha. But she didn't pick it up. She placed her finger on the corner of the check and slid it back across the table toward him. No, Andrew said. Linda froze. Excuse me? The answer is no, she said, her voice stronger now. You think I'm lying? Linda scoffed. Google me. I'm worth $40 billion. This check is good. I believe the money is real, Andrew said, but the answer is still no. Why? Linda demanded, his composure cracking. He's old, he's dying. You're suffering. Your daughter is suffering. It's simple math, Andrew. Utility. One life is ending, another is beginning. Why would you throw away $1 million for a stranger who has 6 months to live? Andrew took a deep breath. She leaned in, and for the first time, she looked at Linda not as a customer, but as a human being. Because, she said softly, my daughter isn't the only one who needs saving. Linda frowned. What does that mean? Mr. Sterling, Andrew said, dropping the pretense. I know who you are. I saw your face on the news this morning. They were talking about your merger with the Asian tech giant. Linda stiffened. So you know I'm good for the money. Take it. I also know, Andrew continued, her voice trembling slightly, that my father worked for one of your companies, Sterling Steel in Ohio. The air left the booth. Sterling Steel. Linda had liquidated that plant 10 years ago. He had stripped the pension fund to pay off a debt to a venture capital firm. 3,000 people had lost their jobs overnight. My dad, he lost his pension, Andrew said. She wasn't angry. She sounded incredibly sad. He lost the house. He couldn't afford his heart medication. He died 2 years later. A stroke. Linda went cold. The ghost of his past was sitting across from him, wearing a stained apron. So take the money, Linda hissed. Take it as reparations. Take it as revenge. I killed your father in a way. So kill me. Take the $1 million and say you'd unplug the machine. I can't, Andrew said. Why? Linda shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The trucker in the back stirred. Andrew reached into her apron pocket. She pulled out a small, battered photograph. It was a picture of a man in a hard hat holding a baby. Because my father taught me something before he died, Andrew said, tears welling in her eyes. He told me that a man's worth isn't in what he has, but in what he refuses to take. She pushed the check further away. If I take your money to say I'd kill a stranger, then I become the kind of person who hurt my father. I become you, Mr. Sterling, and no amount of money is worth becoming you. Linda felt like he had been punched in the chest. I become you. She looked at him with pity. Not hate. Pity. She, a waitress with broken shoes and a sick child, pitied the man with $40 billion. You think you're testing me, Andrew said quietly. But you're really testing yourself. You want me to take it so you don't feel guilty about the things you've done. You want to believe everyone is broken so you don't have to feel bad about being broken. She stood up. Keep your $1 million, Mr. Sterling. You need it more than I do. It's all you have. She turned to walk away. Linda sat there, stunned, paralyzed. The check lay on the table like a dead leaf. But the story didn't end there. Because Linda Sterling was a man who never accepted defeat, and Andrew had just started a war she didn't know she was fighting. As Andrew pushed through the kitchen doors, Linda grabbed the check. He didn't tear it up. He stared at it. He signaled to Cole, his bodyguard, who was watching from the window. Cole rushed in. "Sir? Is everything okay?" Linda stood up, his legs shaky. "Get me the private investigator. Now." "Which one, sir?" "The best one. I want to know everything about Andrew, her last name, her daughter's medical history, her debts, everything. By morning." "Sir, are we going to crush her?" Cole asked, confused by the look in his boss's eye. Linda looked at the kitchen door where Andrew had disappeared. "No," Linda whispered. "I'm going to ruin her life. I'm going to make sure she never has to work another day in her life. But first, I have to find out if she's real." He walked out of the diner into the rain, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel the cold. He felt a fire. He had 6 months to live. And he had just found his final project. The penthouse suite of the Sterling Tower was located on the 88th floor. It was a palace of glass and steel floating above the clouds. It was silent, cold, and meticulously clean, a stark contrast to the sticky, warm chaos of Jerry's diner. Linda sat in his leather armchair, an IV drip attached to his left arm. The private nurse, a stoic woman named Beatrice, checked his vitals and left the room without a word. She knew better than to make small talk. On the mahogany desk in front of him lay a manila folder. It was 3:00 a.m. "Read it to me, Cole," Linda commanded, his eyes closed. He was exhausted, the cancer gnawing at his energy reserves, but his mind was racing. Cole, the bodyguard who doubled as his fixer, stood uncomfortably by the desk. He opened the folder. "Her full name is Andrew Miller," Cole began. "Age 26. You were right about the father. Frank Miller. He was a shift foreman at the Sterling Steel plant in Ohio. He was the union representative who tried to negotiate the pension retention deal before the liquidation." Linda's eyes snapped open. He remembered Frank Miller, a stubborn man with a thick mustache and a loud voice. Linda had crushed him in the negotiations, threatening to move the entire operation to Mexico if the union didn't cave. They caved, and Linda shut the plant down anyway 6 months later. Frank committed suicide 2 years after the plant closed, Cole said, his voice dropping an octave. "The report says stroke, but the police report, it was a deliberate overdose of heart medication. He left a note apologizing to Andrew for losing the house." Linda felt a cold shiver that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "I didn't just fire him," Linda thought. "I killed him." "Continue," Linda rasped. "Andrew moved to Seattle 3 years ago. She works 2 jobs. The diner shift is 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Before that, she cleans offices from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. She sleeps about 3 hours a day. And the child? Lily Miller, age 6, diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 3. But it's complicated. She has a rare autoimmune condition that makes her resistant to standard insulin. She needs a specialized synthetic analog called Glucopro." Linda froze. Glucopro. It was a drug manufactured by Astra Sterling. It was the crown jewel of his pharmaceutical portfolio. It was also one of the most expensive drugs on the market, retailing at $3,500 per month without insurance. "Does she have insurance?" Linda asked. "State minimum," Cole replied. "It covers generic insulin. It doesn't cover Glucopro. Andrew pays for it out of pocket. She's currently $42,000 in debt to a loan shark operation disguised as a payday lender. If she misses a payment, the interest compounds at 200%. Cole paused, then placed a photo on the desk. It was a surveillance shot taken earlier that evening. It showed Andrew walking into a pawn shop, holding a small gold ring, probably her mother's wedding band. "She sold this tonight, sir, after she left the diner. She got $80 for it. She used it to buy a half dose of the medicine." Linda stared at the photo. She had turned down $1 million. She had walked away from the easy way out, the immoral way out, only to go pawn her dead mother's ring for $80, just to keep her daughter alive for another day. It defied every logic Linda had built his empire on. In Linda's world, everyone had a breaking point. Everyone sold out eventually. But Andrew Miller was suffering in a hell he had helped create, and she still refused to sell her soul. "She's not real," Linda whispered. "People like this don't exist." "She's very real, boss," Cole said softly. "And she's about to be homeless. The landlord served an eviction notice yesterday. She has 48 hours to pay 3 months of back rent or they're on the street." Linda stood up, ripping the IV line out of his arm. A droplet of blood hit the expensive Persian rug. "Sir," Cole stepped forward. "Get the car," Linda ordered. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a manic energy that overrode the pain in his abdomen. "Where are we going? The hospital?" "No," Linda said, buttoning his shirt with trembling fingers. "We're going to the eviction. I want to see where she lives. I want to see the reality. It's dangerous, sir. The neighborhood. I don't care about the danger, Cole. I have a tumor the size of a golf ball killing me from the inside out. A mugger with a knife is the least of my problems. Get the car." Linda grabbed the checkbook, the same one he had used in the diner. He stared at it. He wasn't going to give her $1 million anymore. That was too easy. That was charity. Linda Sterling didn't do charity. He did investments, and he was about to make the biggest investment of his life. The apartment complex was a crumbling brick monstrosity on the south side of the city. It smelled of mildew and boiled cabbage. The elevator was broken, naturally. Linda Sterling, a man who hadn't walked up a flight of stairs in 20 years, climbed to the 4th floor. His breath came in ragged, wheezing gasps. Cole stayed 2 steps behind him, hand inside his jacket, scanning the shadows for threats. They reached apartment 4B. The door was thin plywood. A bright orange sticker was plastered across it. Eviction notice. Vacate by Thursday. Linda could hear voices inside. Thin walls. "Mummy, I'm hungry." A small, weak voice. "I know, baby, I know." Andrew's voice. It sounded exhausted, stripped of the defiance she had shown in the diner. "Eat the toast. I'll bring something better from the diner tonight. Maybe a burger." "I don't like the diner burgers. They taste like sadness." Linda cracked a smile. The kid was sharp. "Just eat, Lil. Please. We need to get your sugar up." Then, a heavy thud against the door made Linda jump. It wasn't him. It was coming from the hallway to his left. A man in a leather jacket, looking like a caricature of a thug, was banging on the neighbor's door. It was the Loan Shark's collection agent. Linda realized Andrew wasn't just poor. She was living in a war zone. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit Linda. The hallway tilted. The smell of cabbage became overpowering. Black spots danced in his vision. "Mr. Sterling?" Cole's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Linda reached out to steady himself against Andrew's doorframe. But his hand slipped. His knees buckled. Not now, he thought. Not here. But his body, ravaged by cancer and the exertion of the climb, gave up. Linda Sterling collapsed onto the dirty linoleum floor of the hallway with a heavy thud right in front of apartment 4B. The door flew open. Andrew stood there, holding a half-eaten piece of toast. She looked down. For a second, she didn't react. She just saw an old man in a suit crumpled on her doormat. Then she saw Cole, the massive bodyguard, kneeling beside him, shouting into a radio. "Code Blue, I need a medic to my location. The boss is down." Andrew's eyes locked onto Linda's face. His skin was grey, his lips blue. She dropped the toast. "Help him!" Cole screamed at her. panic breaking his professional veneer. "He's not breathing!" Andrew didn't hesitate. She didn't ask who they were. She didn't ask why the billionaire from the diner was outside her apartment. She dropped to her knees. "Move," she commanded Cole. Her voice was no longer tired. It was sharp and authoritative. She had taken CPR classes for Lily. She tore open Linda's expensive Italian shirt, buttons flying across the hallway. She placed her hands on his chest, the chest of the man who had destroyed her father's life, and began chest compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Come on," she grunted, pushing hard. "Don't you die on me! Not here!" Linda gasped, a horrible, rattling sound. His eyes fluttered open. He looked up. The ceiling was spinning, but in the center of his vision was Andrew. Her face was inches from his, sweat on her brow, her eyes filled with fierce determination. She wasn't looking at him with hatred. She wasn't looking at him with greed. She was looking at him with desperate humanity. "You're okay," she whispered, brushing hair off his clammy forehead. "Stay with me. The ambulance is coming." Linda tried to speak. He wanted to tell her who he was. He wanted to tell her he was sorry. But all that came out was a whisper. "Why?" Andrew squeezed his hand. Her grip was rough, calloused, and warm. "Because," she said, echoing her father's lesson, "we don't leave people behind." Sirens wailed in the distance. 2 hours later, Linda woke up. He wasn't in his private suite at the Sterling Memorial Hospital. He was in the crowded, chaotic emergency room of St. Jude's, the county hospital where the poor went. Cole had been forced to follow the ambulance here because it was the closest facility. Linda was lying on a gurney in a hallway, separated from the next patient by a flimsy curtain. He felt weak, but the immediate crisis had passed. The doctors had stabilized his blood sugar and given him oxygen. He turned his head. Sitting in a plastic chair next to his gurney was Andrew. She was still wearing her casual clothes. Lily was asleep on her lap, wrapped in a thin coat. "You stayed," Linda rasped. Andrew looked up from her phone. She looked exhausted. "Your bodyguard, the big guy. He's filling out paperwork. They wouldn't let him back here yet because he had a gun." "Why did you stay?" Linda asked again. Andrew looked at Lily, stroking her daughter's hair. "Because you looked lonely, and because you're the man from the diner." "You know who I am," Linda said. It wasn't a question. "I know you're Linda Sterling," she said quietly. "I checked my phone in the ambulance. You're the man who shut down the Ohio plant. And yet, you saved my life." "My dad," Andrew said, her voice shaking slightly. "He used to say that hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. If I let you die on my doorstep, I carry that weight. I won't do that." Linda looked at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights buzzed. He had spent his life building walls of money to keep people out. He believed that everyone wanted something from him. But here was a woman who had every reason to hate him, every reason to let him die, and she had saved him simply because it was the right thing to do. She hadn't asked for a reward. She hadn't mentioned the $1 million. "Andrew," Linda said. His voice was stronger now. "Yeah? You passed the test." She frowned. "What test? The diner thing? I told you, I don't want your—" "No," Linda interrupted. "Not that test. The real test. The one life gave you." He tried to sit up. He needed to get to work. He didn't have much time left, and for the first time in his life, he had a purpose that wasn't about stock prices. "Cole!" Linda shouted, his voice echoing in the busy ER. Cole appeared instantly, pushing past a nurse. "Sir, are you all right? The helicopter is on its way to transfer you to—" "Cancel the helicopter," Linda snapped. "And get me my lawyer, not the corporate one, the personal one, the shark. Get me Marcus Stone." "Sir, it's 5 a.m. I don't care if it's Christmas morning. Get him here." Linda turned to Andrew. The intensity in his eyes frightened her slightly. "You're not going to be evicted, Andrew," Linda said. "I don't need your pity," she shot back, standing up and gathering Lily in her arms. "We'll figure it out." "It's not pity," Linda grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak, but his will was iron. "It's business. I have a proposition. A job." Andrew pulled her arm away. "I already have 2 jobs. Not like this one. I need a caretaker. Someone who isn't on my payroll. Someone who isn't waiting for me to die so they can cash out my stock options. Someone who will tell me the truth." Linda took a deep breath. "I'm dying, Andrew. For real. 6 months. I have $40 billion and 0 friends. I want to hire you to help me give it away." Andrew froze. "What?" "I want to give it away," Linda lied, or maybe it was a half-truth. "But I don't trust the charities. They're all corrupt. I trust you. You're the only person in 50 years who didn't take my money when it was easy." I can't," Andrew stammered. "I have Lily. I have debts." "I'll pay the debts," Linda said dismissively. "That's pocket change. I'll buy the building. I'll buy the hospital. I don't care. But I need you to sign a contract today." "What kind of contract?" Linda smiled. It was the first genuine smile he had worn in decades. "A partnership. You help me fix the things I broke, starting with the people from Sterling Stale. And in return, I ensure Lily never has to worry about a medical bill again." Andrew looked at her sleeping daughter. Then she looked at the dying billionaire. "You're crazy," she whispered. "I'm desperate," Linda corrected. "And I'm rich. It's a dangerous combination." Before Andrew could answer, a commotion erupted at the ER entrance. A tall, blonde woman in a white fur coat swept in, flanked by 2 lawyers in sharp suits. It was Catherine Sterling, Linda's ex-wife. And she didn't look happy. "There he is!" Catherine shouted, pointing a manicured finger at Linda. "He's mentally incompetent. Look at him. He's in a county hospital talking to a street person." Linda's face hardened. The shark was back. "Andrew," Linda said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Say yes. Right now. Say yes, and watch me work." Andrew looked at the screaming woman, then back at Linda. She saw the fight in him. She saw the chance to save Lily. "Yes," Andrew said. Linda turned to face his ex-wife. "Showtime," he muttered. The confrontation in the hallway of St. Jude's Hospital was being filmed. Not by a news crew, but by a dozen patients holding up their smartphones. It was the kind of raw, ugly spectacle that goes viral in seconds. Catherine Sterling stood in her white fur, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like they were carved out of granite. Behind her was Linda Sterling, sitting on a gurney in a torn shirt, looking like a corpse that had refused to stay dead. Beside him stood Andrew, a waitress in dirty sneakers, holding her terrified daughter. "He is clearly delirious," Catherine shouted, for the benefit of the witnesses. "He is suffering from a mental breakdown induced by late-stage pancreatic cancer. As his former spouse and the largest minority shareholder of Sterling Dynamics, I am invoking the emergency competency clause." She snapped her fingers. One of the lawyers, a man named Julian Vance, wait, no, use Western names only, let's go with Robert Graves, stepped forward with a clipboard. "Mr. Sterling," Graves said, his voice oily, "if you could just sign this voluntary commitment form, we can get you to a private facility. We just want to help." Linda laughed. It started as a wheeze and ended as a bark. "Help me," Linda said, pushing himself off the gurney. He swayed, but Andrew caught his elbow, steadying him. "You want to bury me in a chemically induced coma so you can liquidate the assets before the stock dips." Linda looked at the crowd of people filming. He looked at the doctors watching nervously. Then he looked at Andrew. "Andrew," Linda said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Do you remember the question I asked you in the diner?" Andrew blinked. "Yes." "Did you answer it?" "Yes." "And what did you prove?" "That some things aren't for sale." Linda turned to his ex-wife. "Catherine, you've been trying to buy my death for 5 years. You're suing me for $200 million. I'm offering you a new deal right now." Catherine narrowed her eyes. "What deal?" Linda reached into his pocket, realizing his checkbook was with Cole. He signaled Cole, who handed him the book and the pen. Linda scribbled furiously against the metal railing of the bed. He ripped the check out and held it up. "This is a check for $500 million, Linda announced. The ER went silent. "It's everything you're suing for, plus a bonus. Take it. Walk away. Drop the competency suit. Leave me alone to die in peace." Catherine stared at the check. Her eyes gleamed with avarice. $500 million. It was more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. "However," Linda added, his voice dropping to a predatory growl, "if you take it, you sign a document right now stripping you of all voting rights in the company. You get the cash, but you lose the power." Catherine didn't hesitate. She didn't care about power. She cared about Prada. "Give me the pen," she hissed. She signed the papers Robert Graves hurriedly produced. She snatched the check. "You're a fool, Linda," she sneered, tucking the check into her purse. "You're dying, and you're throwing your money away on this." She gestured vaguely at the hospital, the poor patients, and Andrew. "Get out," Linda said. Catherine turned and marched out, her lawyers trailing her. She had won. Or so she thought. As the doors swung shut, Linda slumped back onto the gurney, sweat pouring down his face. "You just gave away $500 million, Andrew whispered, horrified. "You could have fought her." "I didn't give it away, Andrew," Linda wheezed, closing his eyes. "I bought time. Time is the most expensive commodity in the world, and I just bought us 6 months." He opened his eyes and looked at her. "Now, we have work to do, and we're going to need a lot of coffee." The next 5 months were a blur of chaotic redemption. Linda didn't go home. He moved into a modest hotel suite near the hospital and set up a war room. He hired Andrew officially as his executive liaison. Her salary was $20,000 a month, enough to pay off her debts, get Lily the best care, and secure a future. But Andrew earned every penny. They worked 18-hour days. Linda had a list. It was a list of names, towns, and companies he had destroyed over 40 years. Week 4. They flew to Ohio. Linda stood in the town hall of the city where Sterling Steel used to be. The town was a ghost town. He faced a crowd of angry, unemployed steelworkers. He didn't make a speech. He simply announced the creation of the Miller-Sterling Grant, a fund named after Andrew's father, fully capitalizing a new green energy manufacturing plant in the old steel mill. He rehired the entire workforce. Week 12. They went to the headquarters of Astra Sterling. Linda fired the entire board of directors on a Zoom call while eating a bagel. He signed an executive order capping the price of Glucopro and all life-saving insulin at $10 per vial. The stock price tanked. Wall Street screamed. Linda laughed. "Let them sell," he told Andrew. "I'm not in the business of making money anymore. I'm in the business of making amends." Week 20. Linda's health began to fail rapidly. He could no longer travel. He worked from his bed, surrounded by monitors. Andrew was there every day. She read to him. Lily drew pictures and taped them to his IV pole. For the first time in his life, Linda Sterling wasn't lonely. He had started the trick question as a cruel game to prove humanity was garbage. But in the end, the game had been played on him. Andrew had proven that humanity was resilient. One rainy Tuesday, exactly 6 months after they met, Linda called Andrew to his bedside. "It's time," he whispered. His skin was paper thin. "Don't talk like that," Andrew said, holding his hand. "Andrew." "The trick question," Linda murmured. "I never told you the real answer." "The answer was no," Andrew said. "I wouldn't kill the stranger." "No," Linda smiled weakly. The answer is that I was the stranger. And you saved me. You saved me from dying as a monster." He squeezed her hand one last time. "The briefcase is yours, Andrew. Don't let them take it." Linda Sterling died 3 minutes later. The richest man in the world died holding the hand of a waitress. The funeral had been a quiet affair, a stark contrast to the noise of Linda Sterling's life. But the reading of the will was a spectacle. It took place 3 days after Linda was buried, hosted in the cavernous, mahogany-paneled library of the Sterling estate. Outside, the Seattle sky wept a cold, grey drizzle. But inside, the air was hot with tension and the smell of expensive cologne. The room was packed with sharks. Catherine Sterling sat in the front row, wearing a black veil that did little to hide the triumphant smirk on her lips. She had her $500 million settlement, but greed is a hunger that is never fed. She had brought a phalanx of attorneys, ready to pick the carcass of Linda's empire clean. Behind her sat the board of directors of Sterling Dynamics, men who had spent years waiting for Linda to die so they could finally strip the company for parts. In the back corner, almost invisible in the shadow of a towering bookshelf, sat Andrew. She wore a simple black dress she had bought at a thrift store. Lily sat beside her, drawing quietly in a sketchbook. Andrew felt small, an intruder in a world of giants. She wanted to leave, but Linda's final instructions to her had been explicit. "Be in the room, Andrew, front and center." Robert Graves, the executor of the estate, stood at the head of the massive oak table. He looked pale. He cleared his throat, his hands trembling as he adjusted a laptop connected to a large projector screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," Graves announced, his voice cracking, "Mr. Sterling left specific instructions that his last will and testament be delivered, personally." Catherine scoffed loud enough for the room to hear. "Just read the document, Robert. We know the liquid assets go to the trust. We're here for the controlling shares." "If you would please, Mrs. Sterling," Graves said, sweating. He insisted on the video. The lights dimmed. The screen descended. A hush fell over the room, not out of respect, but out of curiosity. The screen flickered to life. Linda Sterling appeared. He was sitting in his hospital bed, wearing his silk pajamas. He looked frail, his skin translucent, but his eyes burned with the same cold fire that had terrified Wall Street for 4 decades. "If you are watching this," the video Linda began, his voice raspy but clear, "then I am dead. And if I know you people, you're probably drinking my scotch." A few uncomfortable shuffles in the room. "I'll keep this brief. I don't want to waste eternity talking to you." Linda leaned into the camera. "To the board of directors, you are a collection of unimaginative cowards. You wanted me gone so you could raise prices and cut research. You're fired, all of you, effective immediately upon my death." The board members erupted. "He can't do that," one shouted. "This is preposterous." "Shut up, Jenkins," the video Linda snapped, as if he could hear them. "I own 61% of the voting stock. I can do whatever I want." The room fell deadly silent. "To my ex-wife, Catherine." Catherine straightened up, her eyes narrowing. "You have your settlement, $500 million. You signed the agreement. You have no claim here. But I know you, Catherine. I know you're sitting there right now, plotting how to sue the estate for emotional distress or mental incompetence. You want the rest of the 40 billion. Linda chuckled darkly. It was a terrifying sound. I spent my entire life asking people, "What is your price?" I thought everyone had one. I thought loyalty was a myth and integrity was a fairy tale for poor people. I was wrong. I found one person who didn't have a price. The video cut away from Linda's face. Grainy black and white footage appeared on the screen. It was the security tape from Jerry's diner. The room watched in stunned silence as the scene played out. Linda sliding the check across the greasy table, the zoom in on the amount, $1,000, and then the moment that defied logic, Andrew pushing the check back. "This is Andrew Miller," Linda's voiceover played. She was drowning in debt. She had a sick child. She had every reason to take the money and run. But she refused to compromise her soul for my amusement. The camera cut back to Linda. He looked tired now, but peaceful. To manage great power, you must be incorruptible. You cannot care about the stock price more than the people. I am leaving 100% of my assets, my real estate, my intellectual property, and the controlling interest in Sterling Dynamics to the only person who proved she couldn't be bought. He paused for effect. I leave it all to Andrew Miller. The explosion of noise in the library was instantaneous. It was chaos. "This is insanity!" Catherine screamed, leaping to her feet, knocking her chair over. "She's a waitress. She's a nobody. I'll contest this. I'll tie this up in court for 50 years. The lawyers were already on their phones, shouting orders to their firms. The board members were red-faced, pointing fingers at Graves. "Silence!" Linda's voice on the video boomed, amplified by the surround sound system. The volume shocked everyone into stillness. "I knew you would react this way," Linda said, a smirk playing on his lips, "which is why I have built a poison pill into this trust. It is an ironclad clause drafted by the finest legal minds in Switzerland." He held up a thick document on the screen. "If this will is contested by anyone, specifically you, Catherine, or any member of the Miller family, the trust dissolves. But the money doesn't go to the next of kin. The clause dictates that in the event of a legal challenge, the entire fortune, all $40 billion, is immediately liquidated and donated to the United States Internal Revenue Service." Gasps of genuine horror filled the room. To these billionaires, the government getting the money was a fate worse than death. "So go ahead," Linda taunted. "Sue her, fight her, and watch every single penny disappear into the federal tax budget. Or sit down, shut up, and let her do the job." Catherine stood frozen. Her face went from red to a ghostly white. She looked at her lawyers. They shook their heads slowly. There was nothing she could do. It was the ultimate checkmate. "Andrew," Linda said, his voice softening. The camera zoomed in on his face, showing the tears in his eyes. "I know you're scared. Don't be. You have the heart of a lion. You saved me, not with medicine, but with mercy. The briefcase is yours now. Don't let them take it. Goodbye." The screen went black. For a long minute, the only sound was the rain hitting the library windows. Slowly, all eyes turned to the back of the room. Andrew Miller was still sitting there, clutching Lily's hand. She was trembling, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. $40 billion. The weight of it was crushing. Catherine turned slowly to face her. The hatred in her eyes was toxic, but her fear was stronger. She knew she was beaten. "Well?" Catherine spat, her voice venomous. "What do you have to say, waitress? Are you going to serve us coffee?" Andrew looked at the woman. She looked at the greedy men in suits. She thought of her father, dying because men like this had decided he cost too much. She thought of the insulin she had rationed. She stood up. She didn't look small anymore. "No, Catherine," Andrew said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried a steel that silenced the room. "I'm not serving coffee." She walked to the front of the room, past the lawyers, past the stunned board members, and stood at the head of the table where Linda's video had just played. She placed her hand on the mahogany surface. "I am liquidating the private jet fleet on Monday," Andrew stated, looking directly at the board. "We will use the proceeds to fund a new division focused on affordable medical technologies. If you don't like it, you can resign. I believe Linda already fired you, but I'm willing to rehire anyone who actually wants to work." She turned to Catherine. "And as for you, you have your money. Leave my house. Now." It was the first time she had called it her house. Catherine opened her mouth to argue, but she saw the look in Andrew's eyes. It was the same look Linda had when he was about to destroy a competitor. Catherine gathered her fur coat, signaled her lawyers, and stormed out without a word. Andrew let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 6 months. She looked down at Lily, who had walked up to stand beside her. "Mummy," Lily whispered. "Are we rich now?" Andrew knelt down and hugged her daughter, burying her face in Lily's neck. "We're safe, baby," Andrew whispered. "We're finally safe." Epilogue: The legacy of no 10 years later. The world expected Andrew Miller to fail. The financial tabloids gave her 6 months before she went bankrupt or sold out. They called her the Waitress CEO. They mocked her lack of a degree. They were wrong. Andrew didn't run Sterling Dynamics like a hedge fund. She ran it like a family. She remembered what it was like to be hungry, so she ensured every employee, from the janitor to the VP, had full benefits and a pension. She remembered the fear of medical bills, so she turned the pharmaceutical division into a non-profit entity that produced life-saving drugs at cost. She didn't live in the Sterling estate. She turned it into a transitional housing facility for single mothers. She bought a nice 4-bedroom house in the suburbs with a big backyard for Lily and their 2 rescue dogs. One sunny afternoon in November, Andrew stood in a quiet cemetery overlooking the Seattle skyline. She held a bouquet of white lilies. She walked to a black marble headstone. It was simple, just as he had asked. "Linda Sterling," he asked the question. She gave the answer. Andrew knelt and placed the flowers on the grass. She was 36 now, wearing a tailored blazer and confident shoes. No more rubber bands holding them together. "Hey, Linda." She spoke softly to the wind. "Stock is up this quarter. We just launched the Clean Water Initiative in Ohio. You'd hate it. We're losing millions on it, but we're saving thousands of lives." She smiled, tracing the letters of his name. "Lily is graduating high school next week. She's going to study bioethics. She wants to make sure the next Linda Sterling has a conscience before he gets the checkbook." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, laminated piece of paper. It was the original check, the one for $1 million. The paper was yellowed with age, but the signature was still bold. She kept it with her every day. It wasn't a symbol of money. It was a symbol of the moment she realized her own worth. "You were right about one thing," Andrew whispered. "Everyone has a price. But my price wasn't money. My price was a chance to change the world." She stood up, brushing the grass from her knees. She looked out at the city, a city she had helped heal. "Rest easy, old man," she said. "I've got it from here." Andrew Miller turned and walked back toward her car, leaving the billionaire in peace, ready to get back to work. In the end, Linda Sterling died with empty pockets, but a full heart. He learned that legacy isn't about what you leave in the bank, but what you leave in people's hearts. Andrew Miller proved that integrity is the only currency that never devalues. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It helps us share these powerful stories with more people. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might just change the way you see the world. What would you have done with the trick question? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.